Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, it's about 3 months since I tried this the last time without the chassis underneath the body. That wasn't going to work, so we had to get the chassis back up to the garage, get some work done on it, hit a little bump in the road on that, but I think we're in a really good spot to go ahead and get the fenders and the doors and everything on here as much as we can to try to get the door gaps and the fenders, everything's lined up just the way we want it, and get to work on all that. But before we get into that, I want to really thank you guys for all the encouragement, the comments, and really, because cutting the frame open, that was kind of a big deal to cut that apart and try to get it back into spec, or get it into spec, because I guess it never was. But I really do appreciate all your encouragement. You guys motivate me to keep going, and I hope I motivate you guys some, because a lot of you guys have projects that you've been sitting on a while, or started a long time ago, or about to start. So let's just keep working on them little by little, whatever your budget can handle. Let's just keep working on them. I mean, that's the goal, right? To get these things back on the road and really enjoy them. So let's jump in here. I'm going to catch you guys up where we're at. A lot has happened since you guys saw the car last. So let's go in here and we'll take a look at that first and get to work. All right, last time you saw this, we had just kind of got the chassis back underneath there, kind of confirmed that we did some good with the, cutting the welds loose and raising that up. And we're looking a lot better. Is it exactly in spec? No, but we are probably over 1.25 inches better than we were. So I'll take it. So I had thrown some bolts in the body to, test it and everything, but I took all those out because I know the body wasn't sit perfectly straight on the chassis, and I want to start at least from there. So what I did was I measured over to the center line of the body, put some tape, put some marks on there. You can see right there, and there's one way back in the package tray back there. And so I could try to, measure this out with a laser. So it's set for 1.5 days with no bolts, no nothing, just resting on the chassis. And as you can see here, I've moved jack stands up to where the spring locations are, so it's more realistic. It's not being held back there, it's being held right where the wheels would be. And then I came out to start getting this thing sweetened up on the chassis, and I looked, and if you guys remember, without bolts in it, there was a gap. Well, when I came back out and checked it out, everything kind of had just fallen together. It just, between the chassis sitting like this and the body resting on there, the gap was virtually nothing, maybe not even 1/8 of an inch. So it felt like, everything was going right. So I shot the laser at night, and as you can see here, I did it at night because I couldn't see, and I got everything straightened up down to this center hole right here. But then I thought, well, what, these frame horns were 1/2 inch off, so I better line it up to that instead. So I messed around with it, and I got it 17 11/16 from the inside of the frame to the center line, and it was 17 5/8. So we're only a 1/16 off, and that laser line still almost hit perfectly center right there. So I'm pretty happy about that. That means the radiator support is, I centered that up as well with the laser. You can see the line right there. So everything is in line. Put all the bolts back in, tighten them all down. Everything went super smooth, no fighting it, no nothing. So I was pretty happy about that. So I went ahead and started putting parts on. You can see here, have the windshield wiper cowl. I've got the 8 pillars on both sides. I've got them shimmed, kind of ready to get going here. And I hung this fender over here. And as you can see, we still have a gap right here. So this still isn't high enough. We can shim this up, what, at 1/4 inch or 3/8, whatever we have to do. I'm not going to put shims right there. I'll put shims on this because this is perfectly level and centered. So we can actually just shim this up as one whole piece, not 1.5 inches, but if we have to go 1/2 inch, we have to go 1/2 inch. So I got this fender on. It went on pretty smooth. I got this door on. It still needs some work, some adjustment. The gap's too big back here. The gap's too tight up here. But you have to start somewhere, and you kind of have to get them on there and see how it's all working together. And so that's where we're at right now. So I think I want to go ahead and get the door on the other side. We'll just work that side and kind of go back and forth, and then we'll get the fender on, and then we'll just start adjusting stuff and see where we're at, see what we can do. Once we get everything the best we can do, then we can start thinking about modifying door gaps, adding stuff to the edges or whatever we need to do. But we need to get all this put together first, so let's get after that. All right, starting off, I wanted to get the windshield wiper support on there. It is centered up and just one screw in the middle. We can still adjust it out here, that's no big deal. And the A-pillar. So I've got a shim on this side, I've got the screw in over here holding it in place, and if we have to, well, we'll just take the fender off and shim it up and down until they both meet exactly. As far as hanging the door goes, I just use little stacks of wood or stir sticks or whatever you got, just sitting it on the threshold, and then just set the door on there and move it back and forth. But about a year ago or so, I found this this little thing at Home Depot. It's called the wind bag, and you guys probably already seen it, but what you do is you slide this under like your bedroom door if you're trying to line up the hinges to get the screws in or put the pins in. You just slide it in there and pump it up. It raises it up. It can raise up 300 pounds. So I've been using it in the shop instead. And once I get the door on, I just slide this up underneath there, and then I pump it up to get it, raise and lower, because it's hard to find just the right shim to get it, high and then tighten up the bolts. So we're going to be using this today. So at first, we're just going to use the blocks, set it on there, get some bolts started, and get going. All right, it's snugged up enough so it won't fall. It's not looking too bad right there. Now we want to try to get the gaps up here and at the bottom and at the back the best we can before we hang the fender, because really these bolts right here get your front to back, and you can't get to them easily, at least on this car, with the fender on. So you end up taking the fender on and off a bunch of times. So if you can get the door pretty close where you like it, then get the fender on. You may have to adjust it because obviously the fender's showing you something different. So give me a couple of minutes to get this kind of where I want it, and then I'll bring you back and we'll take a look at the gaps, and then we'll get the fender on. All right, the passenger door just basically fell on there, so there wasn't much to see over there. Set it down on the blocks, on the shims, slid it back to where I liked it, tightened it up. Everything worked out. It didn't sag. The bottom gap, all the gaps look good. But this one, no such luck. So I pulled the fender off, which you'll end up doing a lot, and I'm looking at all the gaps. So it's too low here on the bottom gap, so we need to get the front up. When we do that, then this gap's going to get too tight, so we're going to just have to make the best we can of all the gaps. We can obviously manipulate this gap by adding material to the edge or working on this edge, which we will need to do because it's not right there. But let's just start with the front gap, get the hinges up here a little bit. So I got them a little bit loose. We'll slide the bag in here somewhere, it'll fit. We'll just go ahead and pump this up and get the front to raise up here a little bit. Well, it's taking quite a bit of force to get that to go up. That looks better. Let's see how we're looking back here now. So I use this stir stick, and that's what I use to match up, do the other door. And this is a little tight right here, so we actually need to move that forward. But we're not looking too bad right there. So the gap looks pretty even. It looks a little higher right here. And we might be a little high here. So once I tighten it up and let everything loose, it may sag down. If not, we're going to have to force it down a little bit. Let me tighten up the hinges and we'll see where we're at. All right, let the bag out. This thing really comes in handy. It's really sped up a lot of this work. Now that bottom gap looks pretty good. It looks a little tall back here, and we are a little high. So we can maybe lower that down. Yeah, it's not dropping down. So rinse and repeat. Now I need to make sure I shim up the front nice and tight, so when I loosen that hinge, we can drop it down but not lose our adjustment on the front. And that's kind of what you have to do, I'll need the bag in the back, so I got to find shims that fit there. So give me a minute to get this back and forth done, and I'll bring you back and we'll look at both doors. All right, I don't know how one door could be so easy and the other door be so hard. 45 minutes later, probably a little over 45 minutes, I'm not exaggerating, to get this door like that one. So we have the gaps looking pretty good here. The elevation is looking good. That's about the exact same gap. The gap right through here is about the same as the other door. And you guys can see this little kind of hoop-de-doo in there where it gets smaller right here. Well, remember, this is the quarter panel we got off the donor car and welded on. And I had something going on here and I hammered it down and that kind of pushed that out right there. So I think we're going to have to split this, hammer that over, weld it, grind it, you know, fill. So, but we're looking pretty good overall. The gap here is a little bit bigger than the other side. They're similar across here, a little bit different here and there. This one is a little bit tighter right through here, which I like. I never liked that giant gap that was in there, but I think we're looking pretty good, bottom, everything. So, and if you look down through this way, you know, it looks really good as far as alignment to the quarter panel, but we'll get to the, you know, trying to make that as nice as possible later. But we've got a really good head start on these because we worked them already a little bit. So I think it's about time to go ahead and get the fenders on. We'll do the passenger side, I guess. It's easier to film. I got more room over there. But, you know, this door's looking really good. They're swinging really good. And you can tell here the gap's a little bit bigger. And I don't like that gap. I don't know, what do you guys think? I'm thinking about taking these A-pillars, once we get everything figured out, and maybe adding something down here to tighten this gap up a little bit. There's no reason for it to be that large. So I'm thinking about, you know, I've got the old A-pillars, or I can make a piece of sheet metal, make this bead come down a little bit and tighten up that gap. I don't know if it's going to be worth it, but that's something we can worry about later. But all in all, I think we're looking pretty good. So let me put the camera down and we'll get the fender on and see how this, how high this radiator support it needs to come up, because we're going to have to shim this up. I think it's still not high enough, but we'll figure that out as we go. All right, let's get this fender on here. Probably should open the door, make it a little easier on me. Now, when we had this on here before, we had a pretty good pile of shims up here on the front, or right here, and I don't like the way that looks, so we're going to have to figure out something so it doesn't, you know, doesn't look like a mess up here in the front. I don't know if we want to lower this tab or raise something up. I'm not sure what to do, but we'll just get a bolt in here so this thing doesn't fall. I'm using a really long bolt up here on front so I can just lift the fender up and put shims up under the front. Obviously we're not going to shim it right here, but that way if I shim it and get it right where it wants to be, then I can just move those the same thickness of shims down on the radiator support and get that where we want it. So let's go ahead and get these shims up here till this thing gets to the right height, which is not so easy. All right, we've got to adjust it. I had to get some front end alignment shims out of body shims. I used them all up, I guess. I got to get some more. So we're looking pretty good along here. It's a little high right here in this corner, but everywhere else it's looking pretty good. I like it. But if I push down right here, let me show you what's going on. I'm going to push down right here, and I want you guys to watch the front. Now, as I push right here, look at that fender come up and down. So it appears the fender still wants to go up a little bit higher. Now don't worry that none of this lines up, because the radiator support's going to go up with it and all this will line up. But we're just using this as a base to shim from. So it looks like we need to come up even more to get this fender to lay exactly where it wants. And that's the idea. You don't want to have to force everything into position. You want to keep tinkering with it till it basically just lays there. You're going to have to do a little bending, a little stuff to make it go exactly where you want when you tighten the bolts, but you certainly don't want to have to contort your panels to make it, you know, do what you want, because then they're going to have that weird look. Even when you're done, it's not going to look right. So I'm going to go ahead and get another shim up underneath here, and we're going to get that up, and then we can start looking at the door gap. All right, we're looking really good up here. Not perfect. We can always push down on that. There's two tabs right here. You can bend them or shim them to get exactly what you want. So it's actually looking pretty nice right there. I wouldn't say perfect, but we're sneaking up on it, that's for sure. I'm liking the way it looks. Now we look at the door gap, a little big in the middle. We're good at the back, so, but these gaps, you know how that door tucks in when it closes, you can't make them, you know, super tight. But if we look this way, we can see that the door now is sticking out past the fender. So what I want to do is I've got the door adjusted so it's sitting really nice right here. So I want to pull that fender out until we're about flush here, and then I will transition up here, and then we'll see what we have to do. We may have to tuck the top of the door in a little bit, but we'll start at the bottom. I really don't want to mess with the door because, you know, if I push that in right there, it's going to take that lower corner right there, it's going to go like that, and that's going to pop out. Then we're going to have to start fighting with that. So I like the door where it's at, so I want to get the fender to match the door now. We may have to go back and forth, but we're going to start with the fender and see what we can do. Give me a minute to get that pushed over and all cinched down, and then we'll look at this thing again. All right, guys, got the bottom pulled out, and it's looking pretty good. Eyeball it down through there, and I like it. The gaps actually are looking pretty even, so I made this little gap checker with a piece of sheet metal and a stir stick and some tape. And it pretty much touches just about the same. So the gaps are even. We'll make them as tight as we can without, you know, worrying about, because you know how they tuck underneath, we have to have clearance. The problem we're looking at right now is this matches the fender really nice here. It matches all the way down here, except right here. It kind of, the door sticks out past the fender a little bit. So I don't know if it's the door, I don't know if it's the fender or a combination of both. I don't know if it's manufacturing, probably. But you remember, we reshaped those fenders so they fit on there properly and not have to stretch them. But it looks good, you know, here. So there's no real easy or no way to basically adjust this out. So if I pull the fender out so that doesn't happen, then we're too high here. Then we're going to affect it down there. And if I, you know, vice versa, if I try to push the door in, then it's going to kick this corner out. So, you know, you got to get the door kind of like you really want it, and then we're going to have to figure this out. And the best way to figure it out is to by putting the fender on the other side and comparing what we've got going left to right here. And then if the other side's doing the exact same thing, we know more than likely it's manufacturing, so we're going to have to deal with it. Whether that means trying to bump this out, trying to tap that in, you know, or just make the best of a bad situation. So give me a little bit. I'm going to get that other fender on. I'll use what I learned on this side. That one should go a lot faster, and I'll bring you back, and we'll have to figure out what we're going to do. All right, I got the other fender on, got it adjusted. It looked really good. I mean, really good, better than this side. And then I, you know, stepped back. You look at the front end, and the fenders are kind of drooped this way, right? Because there's no support down here, and the headlights need to be straight up and down. So I put these boards in here, pushed them out, you know, so the headlights are straight over the top of each other, level. And then I check out my gaps and everything again, and look what happened. That thing is massive, and this was all bolted. Everything was tight. And look, now this is sticking out too far. I need to loosen this up, slide it in, do it on both sides. Both sides, exact same thing happened. So it's just amazing how much a little change here will affect it here, a little change here affects it over there. You know, you figure, well, the fenders up there have no effect back here, you know, because look, the wheel well's going to tweak it. You know, there's no way it can get enough strength to twist that. And look what it did. So it looks like, from the way the gap is, that the front of the fenders need to come down, which is a good thing because we've got these blocks in here. I've got 3/4 of an inch blocks over there, 1/2 inch over here. And so I'm going to take this block out, let it float in air, and adjust both fenders, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look at them, see how they're doing. All right, guys, I got those fender lowers readjusted. It's looking pretty good. That changed quite a bit of other stuff. I got the blocks out of the front here, so those are tightened down. I went ahead and measured the front of the hood. It's 54 3/8 from there to there. So I slid these over and got it adjusted off the center. So we should have a 5/32 gap all the way down that side and all the way down this side. These GTO hoods, they're fatter in the front than they are in back. They're a little skinnier back there and a little bigger up here. So we're looking pretty good there. And if that holds up, once we get the hood on, we're going to have kind of a gap right there, and I don't like that. So there's a gap on each side, so we may have to take that nose piece off or something and add on to it so that gap's not so big. But we won't know that till we get the hood on. Now the door gaps and everything came together really nice. When we got that bottom adjusted, it didn't really change much. It actually got a little bit better. So we're looking really good here. We don't have that issue like we talked about earlier where it bumps out right here. So it's obviously something wrong with that door. That door did get hit, but this looks really good. You sight down there. See how they line up really nice? Same thing here. So those gaps, these gaps, this gap and that gap are almost identical in width. So we're looking really good there. And if we sight down here, if I get back far enough, everything is looking really good. The bottom of this fender does stick out a little bit more than I like, but that's where I put that patch panel. So I might be able to fix that. I'm not entirely sure, but it does stick out just a little tiny bit right there. We'll figure that out as well. But I think we're looking good. I was able to take some shims out once I did the bottom, did the front. This was actually too high. So I loosened that up, loosened the one up inside here and lowered this down, pulled this in and out. So we have a perfect match right there. So it's looking really good. Other side, not so much. It still has that bump. I did mess with the door a little bit trying to get it, but it's just a small isolated area right here. So I think when this door got hit, it possibly pulled that out, and this just needs to be bumped back down, and then we'll, sand all that body filler. But the gap here is a little bigger than the other side, and I'm not happy with it. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to add on to there. I don't know, but that's to figure out later. And we've got this little thing right here. You can see that thing sticking out, so I need to grind it off and weld it up and get it nice and straight and smooth like the other side. But all in all, we're looking pretty good. The door gaps here are good, and they're basically identical. Both sides are almost exactly the same width, and we're a little tighter right here, but checking it with the moldings and everything, we're not going to have a problem with interference. So I think as far as that goes, we are looking really good. I'm really happy it's starting to come together. Everything I started to change, it kept helping everywhere else. So once we got those blocks out, got these fronts standing up like they belong, then it all started to come together, and that's really what you want. Okay guys, this video is probably 20 minutes long or so, but it took 3 months to get here. And it kind of all started with me trying to do this without the chassis. And of course then we got to work on the chassis, and then we realized, oh crap, that's not right. But I think it all worked out in the long run. I painted this car multiple times over all the 30, 40 years I've owned it, and the doors and fenders never went on this good. The gaps have never looked this good, and we're not even done yet. So it really, in the long run, it was always, it turned out for the best, really. And I'm really happy. I wasn't happy about it when I realized it, but I am happy now. So I think it was really worth it. So I bought a lot of parts for this car from like OPGI and other sources. So what I want to start doing, like on Tuesdays every once in a while, I'll drop a quick video, 5-7 minutes long or something like that, doing a quick review of what I bought. I know there's a lot of Pontiac guys watching, and that'll get you up close view, my personal opinion of if the part's that nice or not. I did buy headlight rings. Those look really nice. I can't wait to show those. The hood. It's a big purchase. You want to know if it's going to look right and all that other stuff. So look for those on Tuesdays. I'll probably do the hood first, and then we'll get the hood and the hinges on here and get the rest of this all set up and get to work on those gaps. But yeah, super happy with the progress today. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Mash that bell and drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next one.